Imagine this. You wake up one morning, the air heavy with a silence you can't name. The mirror reflects a face you recognize, but something's off. Something gnaws at the edges of your awareness. You've built a life, a story you tell yourself every day, the job you tolerate, the relationships you maintain, the dreams you've quietly shelved. You're not unhappy, not exactly, but there's a whisper in your skull, faint yet relentless, asking, why does this feel like a lie? You brush it off, pour your coffee, and step into the rhythm of routine. Yet that whisper lingers, growing louder with every step you take away from it. Why do you keep betraying yourself? Picture a man standing at a cliff's edge, staring into an abyss that stares back. He's not there to jump. He's there to understand. He's you. Every choice you've made, every compromise you've swallowed, has led you to this precipice. You didn't mean to end up here. You told yourself you were being practical, responsible, good. You silenced the voice that begged for more, the one that screamed when you took the safe job over the risky passion, when you nodded in agreement instead of speaking your truth, when you chose comfort over the terrifying unknown. And now here you are, gazing into the void, wondering why it feels so familiar. What if the betrayal isn't a single act, but 1,000 tiny cuts? What if it's not the big decisions, the ones you agonize over, but the quiet moments when you let yourself down without even noticing? You say yes when you mean no. You smile when you want to scream. You scroll through a screen instead of facing the ache in your chest. Each time you carve a little deeper into the person you could have been. It's not dramatic, not cinematic. It's mundane, insidious, a slow bleed you've learned to call normal. But here's the paradox. If you're the one holding the knife, why can't you stop? Think about it. You're not a villain in someone else's story. You're the architect of your own cage. You lock the door and toss the key, then convince yourself it's freedom. Society cheers you on, hands you a script. Work hard, stay busy, fit in. Your mind nods along, whispering that this is how it's supposed to be. But your soul, oh, your soul knows better. It's the part of you that flinches when you lie, that tightens when you settle, that dreams in colors you've forgotten how to see. Why do you keep silencing it? Why do you choose the script over the scream? Let's go deeper. Imagine a child, you, years ago, wild with curiosity, fearless in wanting. That child didn't care about approval or practicality. They chased what lit them up, unburdened by the weight of should. Now look at you. Somewhere along the way, you traded that fire for a flicker, that hunger for a habit. Was it fear? Shame? The slow drip of expectations you didn't even question? You tell yourself it's maturity, growth, survival. But what if it's surrender? What if every time you betray yourself, you're not just losing a moment, you're losing a piece of that child, that spark, that truth? Here's the kicker. You feel it. You've always felt it. That tension in your gut when you say what you don't mean. That hollow ache when you walk away from what matters. It's not loud. It doesn't have to be. It's a quiet erosion. A theft so subtle you barely notice until the damage is done. And yet, you keep doing it. Day after day, choice after choice, you hand yourself over to a version of you that isn't you at all. Why? What's stopping you from turning around, from facing the abyss and asking what it wants? What's keeping you tethered to a life that feels like a stranger's? The question isn't simple. It's a splinter under your skin, a riddle that won't let go. You can't answer it with logic alone. It's too raw, too primal, but you can feel it pulling you, demanding you look closer, because somewhere beneath the surface, beneath the excuses and the noise, lies the real mystery, the why behind the betrayal. And once you start digging, there's no turning back. You felt it, that splinter of unease, that whisper you can't shake. It's not random. It's not a fluke of mood or circumstance. It's a signal, a flare shot up from the depths of you, warning that something's wrong. But what? You're not a monster. You're not lazy or weak. You're just living. So why does it feel like you're betraying yourself at every turn? The answer isn't on the surface. It's buried, tangled in the roots of your psyche, woven into the fabric of your existence. Let's pull it apart. Start here. You're not one person. You're a chorus of voices, a war of impulses. Carl Jung called it the shadow, that hidden self you shove into the dark because it's too messy, too wild, too real. You think you're in control, but the shadow's there, pulling strings you don't even see. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you choke down your anger to keep the peace, you're feeding it. You're not betraying some abstract ideal. You're betraying the parts of you that don't fit the mask. Jung knew this. The shadow doesn't vanish. It festers. And the more you ignore it, the more it sabotages you. But it's not just you. Step back. Look at the world you're swimming in. Friedrich Nietzsche saw it. A culture obsessed with comfort, with herd morality, with flattening anything sharp or dangerous. He despised the last man, the one who trades greatness for safety, who'd rather nap than climb. Sound familiar? You're not built for this padded cell of modern life. You're wired for struggle, for meaning, for something bigger than scrolling and surviving. Yet here you are, bowing to a script that says, be nice, be busy, be small. Every time you obey, you betray the will to power Nietzsche said burns in you. You dim your own fire. Now let's twist the knife. Arthur Schopenhauer would tell you it's deeper than culture. It's existence itself. Life, he argued, is a pendulum swinging between boredom and pain. You chase desires, and when you catch them, they bore you. So you chase more. But what happens when you stop chasing what they want you to want? Money, status, approval, and start chasing what you want? Fear, uncertainty, the void. Schopenhauer saw it. We're trapped in a will that never rests, and you betray yourself because stopping feels like falling. You'd rather run on their treadmill than face the silence of your own. Here's where it gets psychological. Your brain's in on it too. It's a machine built for survival, not truth. It loves patterns, shortcuts, safety. Cognitive dissonance kicks in when you act against your core. When you lie to yourself. When you settle. That tension, it's your mind screaming, this isn't right, but instead of listening, you drown it out. Aldous Huxley nailed it in Brave New World. We've traded discomfort for distraction. You scroll, you binge, you numb. Every click is a betrayal, not of some grand destiny, but of the quiet voice asking, what do you actually want? And society, it's the puppet master. From the moment you're born, it hands you a role. Fit in, produce, consume. Jean-Paul Sartre would call it bad faith, living as if you're a thing, not a free being. You're not a cog, but you act like one. You say, I have to, when you mean, I'm afraid not to. Sartre saw the trap. Freedom terrifies us, so you betray yourself to avoid it. You choose the cage because the key burns your hand. But let's not stop there. Viktor Frankl, who survived the unimaginable, knew something else. Meaning isn't given, it's made. You're not betraying yourself because you're broken. You're doing it because you've forgotten how to ask, why am I here? Frankl watched men in camps cling to purpose and live, while others let go and died. You're not in a camp, but you're in a prison of your own making. Every time you ignore that question, you hand over another piece of yourself. So what's the root? It's a collision, your wild, untamed soul crashing against a world that wants you tame. It's the shadow you won't face, the will you won't claim, the freedom you won't seize. It's a brain wired to keep you safe and a culture that keeps you small. You betray yourself because it's easier. Because looking in the mirror, really looking, means seeing the blood on your own hands. And who wants that? Who wants to admit they're the jailer and the prisoner? The tension's building now. You can feel the weight of it. These roots run deep and they're not done with you yet. Because this isn't just a personal quirk. It's a force that's been shaping you, breaking you, long before you knew its name. And it's not finished. What happens when you let it run unchecked? That's where we're going next. You're standing on that cliff again. The abyss yawning below. You've been betraying yourself, silencing the shadow, bowing to the script, running from the void. It's not just a habit. It's a current pulling you under. You don't see the damage yet. Not fully. It's quiet, creeping, a thief in the night. But it's there, carving grooves into your life, your mind, your soul. What happens when you let this betrayal run its course? Let's peel back the skin and look. First, your reality warps. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you swallow your truth, you build a world that isn't yours. Psychologists call it the false self, a mask you wear so long it fuses to your face. Carl Jung warned about this. Ignore the shadow. And it doesn't just sit there. It takes over. You start living for others, not you. Your days fill with their priorities, their voices, their rules. You wake up one morning and realize you don't recognize your own life. It's not dramatic. It's worse. It's a slow fade into someone you never meant to be. Then there's your mind. Betrayal isn't free. It leaves scars. Neuroscience backs this up. Cognitive dissonance, that grinding clash between what you feel and what you do, floods your brain with stress. Cortisol spikes. Your amygdala lights up. Your body hums with a tension you can't name. You're not just tired. You're fraying. Anxiety creeps in, a low hum that never stops. Depression follows, a fog that settles when you've lost too much of yourself. Why are you so restless? Because your brain knows you're lying, even if you won't admit it. Zoom out. It's not just personal, it's societal. Aldous Huxley saw it in Brave New World. A culture of self-betrayal breeds a machine that runs on autopilot. You stop asking questions, stop pushing back. You nod, you consume, you obey. The world doesn't need chains, it needs your apathy. Every time you betray yourself, you hand power to the system. You become the last man Nietzsche despised, content with crumbs, blind to the feast. Society thrives when you're small and you're helping it along, one compromise at a time. But it gets darker. Your relationships rot. When you betray yourself, you can't show up whole. You hide your edges, your fire, your mess. You offer a polished shell instead. Nice, agreeable, safe. People love it at first. They lean on your yeses, your smiles. But they don't know you. Not really. And deep down, you resent them for it. Sartre's bad faith plays out here. You're a prop in their story, not a person in yours. The more you give up, the lonelier you get. Ever wonder why you feel so unseen? It's because you've made yourself invisible. Now the body. Gabor Mate's work cuts deep. Self-betrayal isn't just mental, it's physical. Stress from living against yourself doesn't vanish. It burrows. Your immune system weakens, your gut twists, your sleep fractures. Mate saw it in addicts. But it's not just them. It's you. That tightness in your chest. That ache you can't place. It's the cost of saying, I'll deal with it later. Your body's screaming what your mind won't hear. This isn't working. Betray yourself long enough, and you don't just lose your spirit. You lose your health. And the worst part? Time. You don't get it back. Every day you spend in this half-life, chasing what you don't want, ignoring what you do, slips away. Schopenhauer's pendulum swings. You're bored when you're safe, in pain when you're not. But what's beyond that? Nothing, if you don't move. You're not just betraying yourself now, you're betraying the you of tomorrow, the one who could have been bold, alive, free. You're stealing their chance and they'll never forgive you. Can you feel that weight? It's the clock ticking, louder every second. Here's the trap. You don't see it happening. Confirmation bias kicks in. Your brain cherry-picks proof that this is fine, normal, inevitable. You point to everyone else doing it, to the bills that need paying, to the fear of standing out. Culture whispers, this is how it is. Your neurons fire in lockstep, reinforcing the lie. But the abyss doesn't care about your excuses. It's patient. It waits while you shrink, while you settle, while you fade. And one day, you'll look back and see the wreckage, not with a bang, but with a whimper. The consequences aren't loud. They're a slow bleed, a quiet unraveling. Your life becomes a shadow of what it could have been, and you're the one holding the knife. But it's not over. Not yet. There's a way out, a rebellion brewing. You can feel it, can't you? That flicker of defiance, that spark that refuses to die. What if you turned toward it? What if you stopped running? That's where we're headed next.